Welcome, truth seekers and change makers. This is Amelia, Aeon, Karris here from Know the Self Mystery School, and I am joined today with a very special guest. We're going to be talking about awakening starseeds and levels of perception. This is Caitlin Scott, and Caitlin is a channeler. She's an intuitive healer, and her mission is to support other multidimensionals and star seeds to reactivate their own inherent intuitive healing capabilities. She has an osteopathy background and a keen interest in quantum healing. She's currently in the process of obtaining her doctorate in natural medicine, and she works with a variety of interdimensional beings from over 60 different collectives. She's a channeler, and she helps reactivate her client's own knowing and inherent intuitive capabilities. I'm so excited to be here with her today. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you. I'm excited to have this conversation too. I'm looking forward to seeing what we uncover.
Yeah, me too. So Caitlin and I actually met not that long ago, like maybe 7, 8 months back, on Facebook, and we started having some really amazing conversations. And I've been very impressed with her levels of perception, and we've been kind of sharing information back and forth. And I thought it would be really fun to bring her on to my group and for you all to hear what she has to say. She has an amazing perspective of things, and like I love the mix that she has between osteopathy and natural medicine with channeling and akashic record reading and her galactic connection. So it's a super fun combination of skills, so I know you're going to enjoy that. And also want you guys to know that Caitlin has this super cool Starseed Accelerator free 12-day workshop, and we're going to have the link in the comments, so you're going to want to check that out. So right now, as we're recording this, we are entering into the totality of the new moon in Gemini. And this is a really interesting time in the middle of quarantine and all these planets going retrograde. And we're experiencing that as we were trying to go live and having just mega technical difficulties. But here we are in the moment of this new moon. So I wanted to just start there with like, what are you noticing with all that's going on? I know, with Gemini, it's a mixed bag, right? It's like that Jekyll and Hyde energy, the light and the dark, and people are getting really like squirmish with the quarantine and sort of like, okay, it's opening, but there's like a bit of a childish acting out, I'm noticing, as well as like at the same time it's like this great paradox, because there's this incredible intelligence and never before global kind of mixing of higher levels of energy and higher levels of intelligence, but at the same time we're having tantrums and kind of flipping out on each other, and people are blocking and unfriending and blasting off on each other who doesn't agree with their standpoint. So I'd love to just hear your perspective on like what are you noticing right now?
Yeah, so one of the really big things I've been seeing in people is that they have this incessant need to be in a band camp that they think is right. And I had an interesting interaction in a Facebook group this morning that maybe I can share that'll lead us off into this conversation as well. I was doing my regular morning scrolling, checking all of my notifications, and I come across a really interesting post in a group I follow. And the post was about multidimensional and starseed walk-ins, and somebody wanted to know more about them. And so I start scrolling the comments, because that's definitely my jam. It's something I work with all the time with my clients, something I teach. And, I'm looking at everybody suggesting this book, and this author has the only correct view, and this person has the only correct view. And it just was so astonishing to me that in a community of over 30,000 seekers, that nobody was taking all of these different points of view and seeing where the little threads all fit together. And so what I'm really finding, especially coming into this Gemini season, is that people are, even more than they were before, perceiving things as right or wrong, good or bad, light or dark. And so they're forgetting that there's all of these details on the outside periphery. They're forgetting that there's all of this information out here that informs our consciousness and gives us the ability to make really radical connections. And instead, they're staying so limited in these points of view. And I'm really fascinated to see, I don't know if you've been watching, but there's been lots of talk about these new Facebook avatars and, is Zucky starting to track people's faces and, what's happening with the 5G and all of these things starting to come in with, facial mapping and recognition and the iridology. And I'm really wondering, where are we also not seeing the benefits and the magic that comes when we re-advance our technology again like we did before? But again, because we're now back in the exact same parallel timelines that we were in Atlantis, where with great power comes great responsibility, and we can either do really good or mass destruction. We have a huge set of people steering us towards some really interesting outcomes again. And another equally interesting group that are rising up and going, whoa, wait. What we're not seeing is that there's aspects of truth on both sides. What's been your relationship to that? What have you been noticing?
Yeah, the aspects of truth on both sides are what make it so confusing for people to navigate, and kind of gets into the topic that we kind of set out to talk about, like levels of perception, because I think one of the most dangerous things that we're noticing is that a small piece of truth with a bunch of, either hypotheses or assumptions or flat out lies create this whole sort of gaslighting feeling where we feel like, wait a second, like, okay, some of what he's saying is true. Like, yes, we have fake news, for example, but the person who's like claiming the fake news is spewing fake news. So it kind of creates this weird feeling, which I can only relate to gaslighting, because it's like, am I crazy? But didn't I just notice, like, didn't this just happen? And for me, what's really triggering the crap out of me is the mask. And every time I see the mask, I just think, oh my God, they're trying to censor and keep us all quiet. I feel like there's a hand over my mouth who's like telling me to shut up and be silent. And then when I see friends of mine who are really intelligent, amazing, incredible people, like telling everyone to put a mask on, and that wearing a mask is somehow spiritually correct or somehow like the right thing to do, I find myself like really angry. Like, don't tell people, like, why are you listening to the censorship? This is censorship. Like, for me, it has nothing at all to do with the virus. It doesn't have anything to do about getting sick. Like, I'm seeing something else underlying that then people aren't aware of, and then they're getting all this information and kind of complying, and this is really triggering me. So I keep having to like, okay, like, not everybody has the same perspective I do. No, not everybody has the same background and experience. And when it comes to technology, I worked on artificial intelligence, the first artificial intelligence that ever came out to the public in the 90s. And it was incredible. And we were a team of amazing physicists and engineers and people that, we had contracts with the government, and we were working on like top secret stuff that was for disaster relief management. And it was for humanitarian efforts. And we really I believed personally that I was doing something good for humanity, that I was going to help all of these different siloed information structures communicate with each other without needing to, because often, like we see in healthcare and corporations and large manufacturing, all the information is sort of siloed off. Like when you have a health issue, you have to go to your gynecologist or your gastrointestinal person, or you go to the eye doctor and you go to the dentist. They don't do each other, right? They don't have your whole health history. And so with AI, we were setting out to like make it easy for us to have all the information so that the CEO or the one person or the individual could have all the data set and then make informed decisions. And I think right now we're seeing this at such a crazy level. Like we have the internet with all these data sets, and people are trying to be or needing to be like their own agent, right? They have to come into their sovereignty, and yet we're still being governed from the top down. And I think it's just such a confusing time, and I see the magic in it, and I see the possibilities of adaptation where we could really evolve and expand into something incredible like the ancient cultures we remember of Atlantis and Lemuria and these advanced civilizations. But there's such a danger, and we have some really interesting kind of psychopaths at the helm. And it's like, are we giving them like, how are we going to navigate this? So
yeah, you said something really interesting to me about how it feels like that gaslighting. Like, am I actually crazy? And I was standing in my kitchen the other day, just, I don't know, I was preparing a snack for my kids or something. And my whole body, I was standing there just chopping, my whole body just went whoomp. And I had this just amazing message come in from one of my Andromeda guides. And they were talking about the possibilities of parallel timelining and how, you know, when things are irritating us, we can literally just shift a couple millimeters to the right, for example, and jump into a whole new reality. And the message at that time for me was, and maybe this is going to trigger a few people, but was about how the virus doesn't exist in this timeline. And what was really valuable for me about running that trajectory was I was able to eliminate so much of the noise. And I think so many of our starseed and multidimensional friends have forgotten that they can do that. We can eliminate one piece of information to step over and get another perspective so that we can come back and see, okay, this is a little bit more of what's going on. I have like big goosebumps coming through right now. I was so grateful for that moment, because literally moments before, you know, my husband and I were discussing the masks, and I agree, I will not wear one. I know that this is not what my body, what my system, what my energy field needs to create in the world. I am surrounded by incredibly intelligent people who are doctors, osteopaths, naturopaths, nurses, that also are armed with a myriad of information. And the problem right now is that the mainstream messages that are coming out, I'm going to use the word indoctrination, the indoctrination of the people, for example, the words new normal that are being sent out there, this is all a conditioning form that is limiting us from remembering that we can jump timelines, and we start plugging in to a very specific data set. Now, I think the other thing that's really important here is that we often see points of views in a hierarchy in the same way that we see government or officials, or, you know, a doctor being smarter than a Walmart retail person. We see the ego in hierarchies. And this kind of really nicely ties into what we want to share today, with that there are multiple levels of perception and truth. And I'm sure you've experienced this not only with yourself, but with your clients. You know, all really good lies are built on a sliver of truth. Because there's got to be something to latch onto that gets us to resonate, right? Like there's got to be something that gives us that goosebumps, that gives us that like, oh yeah, gut feeling, like we want to lean into it, we want to buy it. But how the rest of that container is built, the rest of that story is put together, is what dictates whether or not we maintain our soul sovereignty as we plug into it, or we become a product of the machine, like we're seeing happen to so many of our friends and fellow light workers right now. I don't personally believe that all of us have the same role in this change of consciousness. And you and I haven't talked about this yet either, so maybe this is a fun thing to go into, but I see how so many different people are holding so many different points of view that are all helping to create an awareness of the entire resonance field, an awareness of that entire potentiality of what we're experiencing. Like in my own work, I don't talk a lot about the government stuff. I don't talk a lot about, the vaccination, because I'm running a parallel timeline where I'm already helping the healers, where we're already in the cleanup crew, where we're already positioned to be working with the bodies. But then we have another group of people, like a girl I love listening to is Gigi Young. Do you listen to her at all?
No, I don't know who she is.
Yeah, she does a bit of channeling. She has a YouTube channel, interesting to listen to. She's very polarized, and she's very much about shouting out the injustices that are happening on this planet right now and what's happening with the dark forces. But then you have another person like an Elizabeth April, who's really into the 5D matrix and opening up the possibility change and, just really holding this, and you dance in between kind of the two things. You're like, okay, guys, this is what's going on, but we got to go over here. And I think it's all important. There's a reason that all of us are positioned where we're positioned. But the key is, do we know why we're there, and do we understand our role, and are we clearly demonstrating that?
Yes. Yeah, it's so key. I love what you said about the timeline jumping. And I think, not everybody in my audience maybe understand what that is. I'm sure yours do, because you talk about it a lot. But I wait for people to get ready for certain information before I share it, because what I find is that, like you said, we each have different roles to play. And I like to be a bridge between the very grounded sort of street level perception all the way up to the highest levels of society. And I've worked with all those different types of people, and we all need to learn from each other. Like that's what I see. Like every perspective is valid. I also see that many of us are living in different dimensions. I mean, we are multidimensional beings, and those of us who've accessed different levels of consciousness, we can actually jump and shift and like just reside in those higher levels of consciousness. Some light workers and healers I see, they're so uncomfortable with this 3D polarized dimension that they're constantly kind of bypassing the responsibilities of being human at this moment. And I don't want to say there's anything wrong with it, because I think sometimes it's the only way to survive some of the stuff and the atrocities that are happening here. But for me, what's important is embodiment, and really bringing those higher dimensions through the body and embodying the physical form to activate our multidimensional self inside it. Like we talk about starseeds, and we've called this talk for activating starseeds. And I want to get into that, because I think our perspectives our angle of it is slightly different. So when you say starseed, because I don't use that word as a noun so much, what are you referring to, just for the audience to be clear?
Well, let's be clear. I use the word because it's kind of like the meta catchphrase that people understand for the most part, that are ready to kind of come into my world. To me, a starseed is somebody that is understanding, starting to turn on to that we are more than just this human incarnation, that there is more possibility to what we've been, where we've traveled, where we've gathered knowledge from, and what we've done as a soul. I think what I've seen, most people identify as a starseed because they're like, I think I'm a Palladian, and great, that's awesome. But what does that mean? How does that inform your human body? Yeah, I use it because it makes sense to a lot of people, but I feel like the understanding of coming into who you are and what it's all about is missing in a lot of the work that's here on the earth plane right now. And I'm interested to hear your perspective, but to me, my job in a lot of ways is to remind these people who have these beautiful, voluptuous light bodies how to thrive on this earth plane, because this is where we are. And if your body isn't in sync, if your first level of truth, at the mental scape level is not, I love being here on earth and I am loving hanging out in this human body. We're going to have a disconnect between all of your levels, and you're going to be missing much of the bigger picture. So yeah, like you, I like to really work on the grounding. So bringing all those esoteric ideas and grounding it into humanity. Okay, hit me. How do you
I love that you're so like body focused too, because having the osteopathy and the natural medicine is just, wow. Okay, we can talk about a million things, but back
I
to
know.
Starseeds. So I'm going to go off on too many tangents here with you because I get excited. Starseed for me, yes, it does mean your galactic heritage, but I don't resonate with how people talk about it in the spiritual communities. So I kind of focus more with like entrepreneurs and change makers and people in the business arena, like leaders and emerging leaders, because for me, I feel that those who are awakened need to lead and they need to bring it into society. So I don't necessarily work so much with healers. A lot of my students are healers or go on to awaken their healing abilities and use them in that way. But I'm more excited about people who can bring it into everyday life, like as an educator or as a politician or as a banker, or, you know, I have lawyers, business people, doctors, because I think it is all about just it's about taking where you came from. So the star seed to me is an actual place in the body that awakens. It's in the heart chakra. So when we open our star seed, it's actually that Merkaba light body that encases our soul, and where we embody the spirit drops down, merges with the soul, and activates in the chest. So it's a very specific fundamental thing that you accomplish. So I, as a seer, I see it in people's body. I can see if they have anchored and activated their light bodies and are awake to their star seed. So everybody has a star seed, but we all have a universal consciousness. So when you activate your star seed, so I don't like how people are like, I'm a star seed, I'm a crystal, I'm an indigo. It's like, no, we're all universal beings. We all have origin off planet, or maybe some of us, you know, home is our planet, but we are a part of the stars and this celestial system. So for me, it's like my mission is to activate the star seed inside people so they can remember. And then once they have that activation and open to their light frequency, they start remembering. They start having the past life memory, the dreams, the spontaneous gifts open, their kundalini gets activated, and then they go through complete freak out. They either swing from like thinking they're the Messiah to like going through massive dark nights of the soul and losing all their money, and they're not able to like ground it in the world. They can't keep their job, or they can't relate to people anymore because they've started seeing consciousness and experiences that are so far out and so beyond what this 3D world and the belief structures here have explained to us. And when you experience that, or when you're working with ETs and you're on board ships and you're like, am I mad? Am I crazy? Like,
you're pretty
this is
sure
so
you
real.
lost
And
it,
then
right? Like,
yeah, and you have to ground that in, and it ain't easy, and your nervous system gets fried, and you need people like you, like doctors and people who can help to rewire the whole body goes through an evolution upgrade.
it does.
And it is rough. It's rough. It's not easy, and yet we are here consciously doing it.
You know what I've noticed, which is so fascinating to me, is that, you know, it's a disempowerment program in a lot of ways. The way that the meta community is perpetuating the starseed story, and I'm really excited to be sharing this because it's probably a little bit fringe thinking. I mean, this is not the norm of what's being talked about here, but it is a disempowerment project to come in and say to somebody, oh yeah, you're a Pleiadian, so, and put them in another box, because all it's doing is limiting them from what you're speaking about, which is starting to go through, you know, what is your entire blueprint And what's required in this biosuit to get that all here? You know, and coming into another identity like that, and I have nothing against the Pleiadians, we'll just use them because it's a very common collective that people know about on this earth plane. They're highly written about, channeled, and shared. Is that we stay in the mental scape and we stay in the ego level of truth. We stay in this space that, you know, this is what I believe. This is what works for me. This is what I understand. And we sometimes get a little bit narrow-minded. You know, we've got rose-colored glasses on again, because now instead of seeing through a Pleiadian and human multidimensional lens, we're bumping over and we're trying to only see things like this. And we're forgetting that, yeah, as a species, we are here as a multi-dimensional. We have a 12-strand DNA, which means we should be reading and understanding energy on a 12-dimensional spectrum. Most humans I know can't even work beyond the 3rd and 4th at this time in humanity, because they're not understanding how their body interacts with the elements and ions on this planet. They're not understanding choice. They're not understanding sovereignty. So, you know, I think then we have to look at, when we're putting somebody in that ego state, when we're stuck in the mental scape, what are we missing? Because there's community level truths. So for example, you and I get together and we're like, yeah, liberation, freedom, let's go. You know, what can I do as a being? How can I self-govern and look after my soul self while still being a compassionate, empathetic humanitarian?
Yeah.
We believe that as a community level truth, right? And there's others in our life that believe that too. But then there's a collective level truth. So now, right now on humanity, we have, we could say like an average vibration going on, where most of humanity at this time, I mean, we could get into a big subject one day about the accessory people and stuff too, but most of humanity, the programming is to fall into line. And so the humanity truth right now isn't about empathy. It's not about love. It's not about compassion. It's about compliance. That's the main, right? You and I have talked about this a little bit with everything going on. It's compliance. And so that energy, that collective level truth is impacting the ego level self on such a extreme level right now that, again, like that gaslighting, people think they are wrong for going above and beyond that and going, you know what, I don't think that's right. But wait, everybody else is falling in, right? And then they go and they check in again and, well, but my whole family is doing it like this, so I should too. So one of the important things we need to really understand, you know, as we're coming into this awakening, as we're really stepping into who we are, is that truth as an individual, as a community, as a collective, is ultimately a belief, until we get down to the very tiniest fragment that we can currently measure, which is the quanta light element. And until we can get back to that, everything needs to be seen as fluid. And if we can't get to that fluid state, so currently, I'll give you an example because this one is triggering. Probably not to you, but maybe somebody who's going to listen to this.
Yeah.
Currently, my belief is that I would not shove a vaccine from any company into my body, my children's body, and if I could prevent it, into anybody's body on this planet. However, my belief is fluid. If we had a group of, let's say, Arcturian scientists manage to walk through and come and develop some kind of light build structure that is going to help us accelerate so that this biofield is no longer affected by virology, I'd be the first one in line. Right?
I'm with you. Yeah.
Right?
I know.
You and I would both be there.
It's not like I'm against science. I mean, it's hard. It's the nefarious intention behind it that really, really disturbs me. And when I say like I would never take the vaccine, I had like 400 comments on one little text I posted on Facebook, which blew my mind, because I just said like, who would take the vaccine? And thank God most people said no. But the ones who were like saying yes, and I thought, what makes you trust these people? Like, what makes you trust even this process? Like, where is this coming from? And I have to look like, okay, so they are being, let me back up. What is happening right now with the coronavirus, the quarantine, all of this, for me, it's a big drill. They're running a drill. I've seen this a million times. This is an emergency response drill. They are testing out martial law. They're testing out one world government. They're testing out how far it takes to push us into how much we're going to comply, how controllable are we, how much are we going to give away our rights blindly, and at what level do we rebel, and how. And the beautiful thing about it, the beautiful thing, because that sounds horrible and it's everybody's worst nightmare, and so a lot of people just can't even see it. They're totally in denial and believing that we are really sheltering in place because of the flu. Like, it's just absurd to me at this point. But anyway, from my opinion aside, the beautiful thing behind this, because when I say that, people think I'm inciting so much more fear, like, oh, that we have one world government, we have all these dark agendas. Yes, and it's pressurizing us to activate our sovereignty. And that timeline jump you talked about, it's possible. I've done it multiple times. It's there. The new earth exists. And it's not this fluffy rainbows and unicorn thing that so many,
Right.
new agers hide in. And like, oh, it's all crystals and rainbows and this. No, it's not. There are thousands, if not millions of other entities that we are engaging with that will scare the shit out of you when you're face to face with them. It's not like they look like the rainbows and unicorns and fuzzy furry creatures that you see in the movies you want to hug. Some of them are, and some of them are downright terrifying. And I'll tell you, when you're face to face with them, you will shake, you will probably crap your pants. Like, it's terrifying. It has shaked me to my core. And yet the Intergalactic Council is real. It is here on the planet engaging with our government, and this is a drill, and they're checking, and there is light and dark. And then I think that we have this incredible opportunity to really wake up, and my passion and mission is like, okay, you guys, you have a seed hidden inside you. Let's water that. Let's have you remember, because the second you remember your identity and you tap into your own Akashic blueprint, you're going to have gifts and abilities that you didn't even know were possible. And your human mind and your limited perception of cognition cannot even ground. We have to open this whole frontal cortex in order to even see it. I mean, I remember in the history books, they talked about when the Native Americans saw a boat coming, or their first airplane, like they couldn't even see it because they didn't know such a thing existed. So many people couldn't even see what was right in front of their face until they were introduced to it. And it's fascinating. I've seen that with Indigenous people. Like, I've been working in Indigenous communities that are super rural in India, and I'm like the first white person they've ever engaged with, and they've never been in a car. I mean, I took somebody in a car for the first time, and she was so confused, so freaked out. And for me, it was like, what? This was 2009. And I was like, she's never been in a car. Like, she's never even seen the other. I took her 2 miles from her home. She didn't even know it existed. Like, it's a city she lived. She's never been out of her few block village. It's amazing what we need to, how we can expand. And when we do, how it needs to integrate. The body needs to integrate. And then we can start to see all these things that are right in front of us that we weren't even aware of. And I think that's the shift we're in right now.
What you said about how we're being pressurized right now, I really don't think that some of those collectives, some of those more nefarious, malevolent collectives that are kind of some of the driving forces behind what is happening on this planet right now, I don't think they're necessarily computing, because they can't see it. They can only see their actions. What is happening to all of the people who came in here and are now activating, because I have seen more light workers come on board. I have seen more healers wake up. I have seen more truth seekers, even if they're like in the extremist groups. I have seen more of them go, hey-o, what's happening on this planet? I need to have my eyes and ears wide open. This is my body. Don't touch it, right? Like, I have seen so much of that happen. I don't think they realized that was coming as a side effect, not to the magnitude it's happened anyways. And you're right, like, I giggle about this all the time. There's such a misconception. I should do a whole video on this one day. There's such a misconception about what the dimensions actually are.
Yeah.
That when people are speaking about this fifth dimensional world that we're in, we're not turning invisible. We're not going into a strict 5D. Our container is starting to open up to the quanta field. We are starting to go, ooh, possibility. We are starting to see that there is more than our very limited perception that we've held till now. And, you know, I would be even insane to say that I even know it all. I don't. I haven't been in this world long enough. I am still, you know, 33 years old in this light body. Like, there's still so much.
Yes, and you have the wisdom of billions of years. I mean,
Right?
it's fascinating. I know I woke really young. I was really, at 6 years old, I knew I was Pleiadian, and I started interconnecting with the ships and have been tracked and monitored and interacting with ETs my whole life. And I couldn't talk about it. Every time I talked about it, people were tripping out. Now, I was born in a born-again Christian home that didn't believe in past lives. I had multiple past life memories. As a 6-year-old, I told my mother, this is not my name. Well, you know, why are you calling me by this name? Please don't call me that. It was on and on and on and on. And it took me until my 20s before, you know, world leaders or people in high places were acknowledging me, and we were remembering each other from Atlantis, from these other worlds. And I thought, okay, I'm not crazy. And it was super validating. And then it sort of spun me upside down, because it was like I became a threat to people, and I didn't understand how my truth was threatening people who I saw as very powerful people. Like, why are they scared of little old me? Like, I'm just this young girl or this young person. And it's taken me a long time to really just anchor and anchor and anchor. It's not an easy path, but what I've noticed is there's so many of us that, like the volunteers who decided to come down. Not all of us have been multiple times on Earth. I mean, some of us come to Earth a lot to aid. There's a huge network of us, but we can get so trapped in these belief systems, and also with these different kind of spiritual groups or spiritual thought groups. And I really encourage people to kind of separate a little bit and find their own truth first, like do their own exploration before you start working with different groups or teachers or reading so many books and just assuming other people's information as true. There's truth in probably all of it, but it might not all line up to your origins and what you're here to do. And that's what I've really resonated with you, because I can see that you are helping people to remember their mission, really bring it forward. I think it's imperative right now that people just ground that information into their body, not as like some thought of like, oh, I'm from the Pleiades and I'm an ambassador and I do this and that. Yeah, now do it. Like, just be it. Like, how do you breathe it? How do you bring that into like cleaning your house? Or how do you bring that into raising your children? How do you bring that into preparing your meals and interacting with your neighbors? Like, it doesn't mean you become a world leader, or it could be, or do something really big, or become a channel, maybe, but there's a whole bunch of roles that we play all day long that need your consciousness there. It needs your levels of awareness.
Well, you know, and I think
there.
that whole aspect, and there's a really easy route, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of this remembering process. And what I've noticed is that coming through this whole, we in my circle call it the he who shall not be named plague. I'm going to play off from Voldemort from Harry Potter, if anybody else is a Potterhead. That's what we call it, because then we don't get the fact checkers and all this stuff up our butts.
Right.
But going through this whole thing in isolation, quarantine, and lockdowns, I'm really noticing that the people who are thriving, the people who are really understanding what's going on, not only in their own mental scapes, how it's interacting with their body, how it's interacting with their whole sphere of influence, are the ones that have learned how to start taking at least fragments of their rememberings and integrating it. And that's one of the things that I'm seeing, is that because we sometimes get so stuck in that ego level truth, or in a collective level truth where we go, well, all Pleiadians are like this, and
yes,
sorry to my
Pleiadian,
Pleiadian
and they're not all good.
Right? Not all Pleiadians are love and light, Mother Heifer.
No.
Like, some of them are intense, some of them are badasses, some of them are malevolent. It's just like we have this perception here that within the ET collectives that they're all peace loving, and that's simply not true. They have different governance systems, they have different ways of having councils and things like this. But retracting back, because that's a whole nother topic, another day.
But I'm gonna can you hold that thought, because there's a piece here. What happens when people meet other dimensional beings, they hand over all their power, just like they're doing to the government right now. They go like, oh my God, they go into this idol worship, which I see people do with their spiritual leaders and channels and psychics and healers. It's like, oh my God, like, because they elevate the consciousness and they start sort of worshiping. This is totally not okay, you guys. Like, don't give your power away. Stop giving them access to your system, because the minute you do that, I don't care how good that person is, why are you allowing them to manipulate you? It's like being that super naive person.
Yeah, if you're going to see, even either of us on a pedestal, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
And this is something I talk about in my community all the time, because a lot of times, like you said, people come in and they feel that elevation, they feel that consciousness, they are getting information that they wanted, it's resonating. And then so they put you on a pedestal because they perceive you as peddling truth all the time. You know what I say to my people? And I could be wrong. Truth test everything I say. See how it resonates, because maybe this entire last hour that I just talked to you was a bunch of bull. Did you think to ask? And we need to be doing that with every interaction, everything that comes out from the government, every news thing, every religious leader, everything.
Every spirit guide. I mean, spiritual guides wear masks. I mean, they're not always, you're like, oh, I'm talking to the angels and I'm looking at the thing that the person's calling in. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm really not taking advice from that guide. Oh no, but that's Archangel Michael. No, it's not. Did you ask, or it's just presenting as Archangel Michael? And like, do you really know? How do you know it's really? And then sure enough, like, layers come off. But it's not that I'm always right. I've been fooled many times. I mean, I know this because of my own naivety in awakening to these levels and interacting and being sort of torn up with like thinking. I met an amazing spiritual teacher who I started working with. We became business partners, and I just, because of his magical abilities, I mean, the guy couldn't make himself invisible in front of me. He could literally just meditate, harmonize. He went see-through. Like, when someone is that magical and just like can manifest crap, it's hard not to be like, wow, okay, so everything he says must be truth. It wasn't. That guy ended up ruining my life, stealing all my life's work. He's using, blatant theft. He's done it to multiple people. There's allegations of child abuse. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So those things were gut-wrenching to me. Like, how could this be true? But I thought he was good. And then I saw that he has a legion of darkness behind him. And it's just, people are people. All sentient beings have this capacity.
That's so important right now. That is so important right now, because we need to take everybody off a pedestal in order to see who they are at their light level mission in this timeline. We have to. And light doesn't equal good, friends. Okay. We need to be clear about that. Light doesn't equal good and dark doesn't equal bad. We need to take everybody off the pedestal. So, take some of your most triggering figures. Like, what's his nuts? Anthony Fauci. I don't even know how you say his name.
Fauci.
Take him off the pedestal for a minute. And what would you see behind him? If you were really, really, truly willing to see who he is and why he's here, what he's catalyzing, what he signed up for, what would you notice? I think what you're speaking about is really difficult for the human mind because we are always looking for that shiny object syndrome, right? We're looking for the next big hit. And this is classic symptomology of somebody who's still really addicted to being locked into the 4D paradigm. And for those of you guys that are new to this language, this linguistics, the 4D paradigm is how our body reads right, wrong, good, bad, light, dark, evil, hierarchies, power over power dynamics. And it's where we structure our thought forms and our beliefs and our understanding of the world around us. This is like when you go to a healer and they say, oh, I feel all this anger hanging out in your body. It's a fourth dimensional frequency manifesting into a 3D space. So that's kind of what that means. But when we are still seeing people on a pillar, when we are still in a space where we're seeing somebody as right or wrong, light or good, bad or evil, we're plugging into a 4D grid. What we need to do, and what we're trying to talk about on a bigger scale, but some people are missing the memo here, is that when we start opening more of these dimensional fields within our body, we go from reading just the 3D, which is this physical vessel, our perceptions of time and delineation and mass and alchemy and all those funny things. And we understand that we're reading all this information about what we believe to be true. Then we open up to the fifth dimension and we start going, but I wonder what else is possible. And if I was willing to be the observer of this light, how could I play with it? How could I morph it? How could I, spin it? And we can't get there until we're willing to stop seeing the hierarchy of beings, the hierarchy of possibility. It's all just potential at a light level. And that's, I think, what is so important about understanding these levels of perception is that every time we get locked into one and we forget to stay fluid, we become stagnant. And ultimately, that's what we're all trying to avoid as seekers, because none of us like that feeling where, we feel confused, we're lost in our own thoughts. Maybe in this situation, a depression or an anxiety has crept in about, what is the world coming to? That's easy to let it happen. But that is a symptom of 4D stagnancy. That is a symptom of there's somewhere in this biosuit, in this mental state that you've said, I believe. And it's no longer a belief. You've made it an egoic truth, and we need to crack it open and create fluidity again.
Yes, and that's exactly what opens the possibilities when we're working with higher dimensions of pure manifestation. I mean, the second we open to the possibility and break the belief that, we're demonizing people right now. I mean, that's just what happens. I've been demonized a bunch this last month, and I just giggle about it because I was like, wow, it's so fascinating when some people like idolize you and other people demonize you. And,
right.
and it's just, wow, okay, so we're just locked into truths. We're locked into these ideas that we've created as truth. And then we're not able to just see, well, what can we create? And I know that when we come into our sovereignty, and when I say sovereignty, I mean claiming the star seed, activating the star seed, and like claiming our own energetic body. No longer like being, most people's energetic body is so depleted, and they're being kind of tapped in and manipulated by so many other energies and entities that they can't even differentiate themselves, their own thoughts from the kind of, dare I say, bioweapons, but the energetics that are kind of forming their thoughts, when the thoughts then become their words and become how they're acting and their personality and their beliefs and all of that. And then they get hardened, right? When we take back our power and we start activating our quantum self, all of a sudden, like we can overcome anything. Like anything becomes possible. We can turn any sort of or disease or difficulty into like an incredible beautiful garden if we choose. Like, we're that powerful, every single one of us.
Yes.
Within us. And I think that's the beauty of what's happening right now. Like, if we could all just do that, it's like, oh, they trapped us in our houses, but then we all just activated and then we popped out into like this evolved species. That would
Right?
be my wish. Yeah.
You locked me at home and I met 6 new collectives. Thank you.
Yeah. Monad, activate.
Right. You know, it is mind-blowing.
Starseed Alliance. Yeah.
It is mind-blowing to me how, you know, even in this situation, we could have taken this situation and been locked at home and completely and utterly destroyed ourselves, which is happening to some people on the planet.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Some of them probably have exit strategies planned to get out of here because maybe they didn't get all the codes to be ready for what's coming. Maybe they knew once things got hard, they were going to just come and pass through again and do it again. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think that we were presented with such a beautiful opportunity in the mass of something really obnoxious. It's not even like horrible to me, it's obnoxious. I look at that kind of behavior and the way that, you know, the politicians and these I don't have very nice words sometimes. I look at the way that they're choosing to manipulate situations and mindsets, and I'm like, this is just annoying. Because if I was still in the position I was in even 6 years ago, I would be a mess. I feel so grateful to be where I am now and to have followed all those intuitive nudges and to have really stepped into that, like you said, that personal sovereignty, knowing self from non-self. That is the whole basis of immunity. You know, if we want to circle it over there, and I know we want to keep this to an hour, so just giving you the heads up, we got about 10 minutes. Okay. If we want to circle this over, that concept of knowing self from non-self is the whole basis of immunity. Think about this, you guys. Everything above, so below, so within, so without. If you can't hear what is me, what is not, your human body becomes vulnerable to anything. The electromagnetic frequency waves that are coming, the viruses that get unleashed, the bacteria that come through. You become vulnerable because your body confuses everything as self. That's what's happening with some of the 5G waves that are coming on that we're so confused about. Is not only are they coming on and it's too high of a radiation for most humans to be able to handle. What's happening is the body can no longer determine, for some people, self versus non-self. This is how cancers get created. This is how autoimmune sets in. This is how we end up having horrible bouts of E. coli or COVID. We can't tell the difference. And so for me right now, on this planet at this time, this is why I'm getting ready to run this Starseed Accelerator. You know, the first lead-in I give people is, you know, we'll help you understand who you are, because it makes sense. We have to appeal to the ego first, because if we had this very first conversation, this isn't what people could hear. But they can hear I'm a Pleiadian. That's great. But now I need you to teach you to hear self from non-self. Individual truth, does it resonate with the current frequency of the collective truth? If not, I got to stay close to home. I got to stay close to home, because what I know to be true here for my vehicle at this time is what's going to get me through. And if I shift over into the collective truth, I'm getting in with the sheep, right? I'm getting in with all these people and the accessory people who, by the way, aren't here to wake up. I'm getting in with them, and I'm going to forget what my voice even sounds like. I'm going to forget what my frequency and my tones and my light even feel like, right? And I think that's ultimately what it's all about right now. Is,
that's okay.
You know, can we determine self? Because once you can find that, you become sovereign. You become invincible. You become healed.
Mm-hmm.
right? We no longer, this is an interesting conversation. We can have another one about this another day if you want to. But the whole concept of the empath, you know, empathy is something that I'm really interested in my work, because as far as I see it, it's a stepping stone in awareness, not a forever landing point. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we are able to come down and resonate and it affects our body that much, we are no longer determining self from non-self. We are becoming. And that makes it really difficult for us to maintain our own field, our own light, our own vibration. We are pliable by the masses, and we don't want to be there, right? We can't be a helper if you don't know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it. I agree 100%. Yeah, I think that when we're overly empathic, it's nice to have those sensors and be able to sense, but those of you who are super empathic, I've gone through this myself, it's like you cannot discern. You cannot, this is probably what brought us into this work, right? And I think that's how so many light workers do show up, is like they just either fall into chronic illness or some sort of disempowerment state because they cannot discern their own energy from anyone else's. And it's, we take on other people's illness, all kinds of things happen, and we have to do a lot of inner work to understand that. Do you have any like quick tools you might want to share with people? Because this is not a judgment. I know most of you listening are probably like, me, that's me. So do you have any tools that you want to share, Caitlin?
Yeah, you know what? The first one that I really like teaching to my students is, especially when we're in the stage of the empath, is a really simple question. Because if you're willing to toss this question, not only your brain, but your body, you have enough conscious awareness to kick anything out of your field immediately if it doesn't belong to you. So what I did and what I teach is, if we are having one of those moments where the world seems a little bit crazy, let's say you have this big well up of anger come into your field, the first thing you should be asking your entire essence is, truth, is this mine? Is this even mine? At that level, if it's not, what your body will do is it'll go, oh, no, and it'll start dissipating it. You don't even have to do anything. If you get a yes, it is yours, that's your trigger to go in. I always say to people, you need to use your external stimulus to turn inwards. So for example, let's go back to the anger again. If you had a huge well up of anger come up, and let's say, Amelia, you shared about the masks, right? You have this well up of anger come up there. You might turn that inwards and go, where did I see this happen before? Mm-hmm. Where have I felt this prior in my life? Where do I still feel like this is happening? And maybe you go into some of your clearing tools. Maybe you do clearing statements. Maybe you do quantum healing. Maybe you do tapping. It doesn't really matter. Maybe you're at the stage where you understand Reiki and you start shedding this stuff off. Maybe you know emotional release. So that truth is that mine, that's the first one I always do. The other thing I get people to check into is their own visceral reaction to a stimulus. So if, for example, you just got told that you have to wear a mask everywhere you want to go if you're going to go out of your house, and your belly goes, whoop, right? And you get that contracted, toxic, like gut-wrenching, this isn't right, right? You need to listen to that. That is something telling you that something is not right about the situation. On the other hand, if I truly believed that everything about this virus was on board and it's as contagious as it's supposed to be, and I heard everybody has to wear a mask, and my body goes, yeah, right? And everything's this huge expansion, that's my body's way of saying, okay, yeah, we need to step into that. Now, don't forget, that's influenced by individual truth and the timeline or the possibilities you're currently running in.
Yeah, so and the role you're here to play, right? I think, like you said in the beginning, we all have very unique roles to play at this time, very unique roles. And, this Gemini moon, just to loop back, a lot of this moon right now is about like this competition and comparison. The Gemini loves to do that. It's that paradox. It's like thinking, and I see this with all my students. I see this with a lot of Gemini friends I have. They're constantly comparing, and it stops them. It's like this self-sabotaging kind of program that's running, that's stopping them from being who they are, because they're constantly thinking, oh, well, I'm a light worker, or, oh, I'm a healer, oh, I do this, or even like, oh, I'm a real estate agent, or I'm this. And then you're looking at all the other people who call themselves that, who have that title, and comparing, and in this like, oh, well, I'm not going to write my book because this person did and they did it better. And oh, well, my voice isn't really needed because this other person says it better. No, that is all BS. Like, each one of you has a mission and a role and a purpose for being here, no matter how small you might think it is. We are all like spokes on the hub of a wheel. Like, we all have our soul groups that we came in with. We are here to work in collaboration and connection with others. Some people will be opposite of you, some people will be similar to you, but your voice is unique and your perspective is unique. So please find what's yours and what's not yours. Do this exercise that Caitlin just mentioned. Ask those questions, like figure out how to activate your starseed and hold your energetic resonance. Because when you do that, you're sovereign and you can easily see, oh, that's not mine. That's not mine. And you start to really ground in your soul essence, and that vibration is your essence, right? And when you bring your essence forward, truth is a resonance. It's not a written word. It's a frequency, right? And when we resonate with that frequency, maybe we don't arrive at 100% truth, but that's our process of becoming. Like, we're continually putting the spotlight of truth on everything that we're doing to shed the masks, shed the masks, the false levels of yourself, so you can really see. I'm so passionate about this. I'm so excited that we have a similar mission, Caitlin. I just feel like our network of activated starseeds are really waking up. I'm so thrilled about it. Please, you guys, go check out her. She's so generous. She's doing a 12-day free workshop to accelerate starseed embodiment and grounding. We have both of us have tons of free resources between us. Jump in her group. You can get my free mini series to master the art of change. It's called Rebirth and Renewal. The link is there. My moon blog's there. You guys, this is time. You can join the mystery school to activate your mission if you're really ready to bring your work forward, or wondering how you can bring these extrasensory perception into your work. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for your time today. I hope we can do this again.
Totally. I had so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so exciting to speak to someone where we can jump to all those levels of reality and still stay grounded. So yeah. Hopefully we didn't go off on too many tangents there. If you guys liked our conversation today, let us know in the comments, add your thoughts and impressions, and yeah, I hope to see you again soon, Caitlin. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.